I like this part right here. Come on. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the on. Till victory is won. Now we add a little something to it. Just to encourage you. We're going to take you to church later. Let's go! We'll keep marching right until the victory is won. To all my brothers out there. Hold your head up, brother, till the victory is won. To all my sisters in the struggle. Keep believing, sister, till the victory is won. Till that day. Till that day comes. Hey. Let us march on. To victory. Till victory is won. Is won.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome to our very special Martin Luther King Day presentation here at Second Baptist Church, a house of hope. Obviously, I am not at Second Baptist Church, a house of hope, because like many of you, if I wanted to get to my church, I could not. And so I'm here in my own home, in the comfort of my home, and I am praying that you all are safe and sound, and hopefully all of your needs are met. You're somewhere warm where you don't have to worry about anything. To those of you who are watching, I see you coming in. Let's get as many viewers as we possibly can to watch and share in this event. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. I've shared the link on my Twitter feed so that we can get as many people as possible. Good evening, good evening. I see your name scrolling, your comments coming. Take time to share this video on your timelines. Take a quick second and click the share button. Tag somebody. For those of you that don't know how to tag somebody, you use the @ button. That's Shift-2 and start typing someone's name with no spaces, and pretty soon you'll see their whole name come up, and that'll tag them. So if you're a family member or a friend or a community member or one of our Second Baptist members or just somebody who wants to participate in a great evening of knowledge and wisdom and history, come on and tune in. I see the numbers going up, and I'm so grateful for that. So very, very grateful for that. So it is Martin Luther King Day weekend, and it is so important to me that we celebrate this monumental day every year with not just quoting him or putting up pictures of him and memes and different things that we all do, but that we truly and fully embody the spirit of Dr. King, that we really try to hone down into not just his principles, but even the policies that he advocated for. And I also believe it's a prime opportunity to reintroduce ourselves and to a new generation, expose a new generation to our story. There's history and then there's our story. And sometimes history doesn't always include us. And that's why it's so important to hear firsthand accounts from individuals from within our community, and to understand that these experiences, these stories are not just national, but they're local too. I've got a few people that I want to make sure are a part of this. As a matter of fact, I got one right now who was one of our panelists last year, and that was my dear friend, I can't even call him my friend. He's like my papa, Elder Ronald Fowlis. And last year we had Superintendent David Howard Sr., who was a part of our program. We had Sister Irene Reed, who was a part of our program last year. Frederick Harris was a part of our program last year. Mr. Sonny Morgan was a part of our program last year. And they just gave us some amazing insight, stories, things that I didn't know, and I'm sure a lot of you don't know. And I want to tell you why that's so important. It's important because once we lose these voices, and none of us will live forever, I know some people think they will, but none of us will live forever. And whenever we lose these voices, whenever we lose these stories, they're lost forever. And so we really want to make a good effort to keep these stories alive. And you can go back to last year's presentations on Martin Luther King Day. I think it was the 17th last year, the 18th last year. Or you can go back to our Black History program where we did the same thing, and you will see some of the same things happening. But before I introduce our special guests, Second Baptist Church did a very special presentation, and we started it last year, and I asked our congregation, young and old, to participate in a very special presentation to remember Dr. King. And I'm going to play that for you now because it is as meaningful and as powerful and perhaps even more than ever before as it ever was. So I want you to take a moment and watch this, and then we're going to greet our guests and hear from what I call the ladies of legacy. So check out this video, and I pray that it blesses you and inspires you as it inspires me.
Freedom Now movement, hear me. We are requesting all citizens to move into Washington, to go by plane, by car, bus, any way that you can get there. Walk if necessary. We are pushing for jobs, housing, desegregated schools. This is an urgent request. Please join.
A philosopher of a non-violent system of behavior in seeking to bring about social change for the advancement of justice and freedom and human dignity. I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
And so, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream.
It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners
will be able to sit down together
at the table of brotherhood.
I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi,
a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression,
will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin,
but by the content of their character.
I have a dream today.
I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification,
one day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers.
I have a dream today.
I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted,
and every hill and every mountain shall be made low.
The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight.
and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the south with.
With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountains of despair a stone of hope.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together.
To stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
And this will be the day. This will be the day. All God's children will sing with the new meaning.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing.
Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride.
From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire.
Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York.
Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania.
Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado.
Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California.
But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia.
Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi.
From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city,
we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics,
will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last.
Well, that was wonderful. And I want to thank the Second Baptist Church members, our adults, our youth, even some of our friends who joined us in doing that wonderful presentation. Clap it up for them right quick. You can put the little clap emojis in the comments. And that video is on our page on Facebook and on YouTube. And you are welcome to share that, to promote that above and beyond this holiday weekend. Keep sharing it, keep promoting it. And we will be so grateful if you would continue to follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, all those places. You are more than welcome to keep up with what we're doing here at Second Baptist Church. We would love to have you. We would love to see you, love to be able to share with you. Let's get to our guests. I'm so excited because the theme of this year's program is Ladies of Legacy. Ladies of Legacy. And I wanted to focus on the female members of our community, the female pillars of our community, and there are so many. If I could, I would have 50 women on this Zoom tonight, and there are always more to talk to. But these three individuals are very special and very near and dear to my heart, and I want to introduce each of them. We're just going to do quick hellos and get into the discussion, so we won't be here forever, you know, saying hi. But my first is my own cousin, and I love her so dearly. She's become like one of the family historians. If we want to know something about where we come from and who we're related to, we reach out to our older cousin, one of our older cousins. Now, she's in the generation above me, or probably 2 generations above me. But I want you to welcome with me Sister Elestine Stargell, or as we call her, Teenie. Cousin Teenie, welcome, welcome. Welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to be with you, Todd.
Wonderful, wonderful. Our next guest is just a wonderful advocate, hard worker. I mean, everybody knows this sister. You can't do anything political or community centered without seeing her around working. She served for years as a director of the ACOP Center. She is always at the center of voting initiatives and political activity and making sure that we have our voices heard. And that's none other than Miss Charlene Allen. Welcome, Miss Charlene. How are you doing?
Good evening, everybody. I consider this an honor to participate, and I thank you so much, Pastor Todd, for asking me to participate.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And thank you for saying hello. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for agreeing to do it. And finally, we have one of Warren's own icons, and we can't even claim her as our own because she belongs to the whole world. She is not only a world-class musician and singer, but she is a mentor and a teacher and an encourager of so many. One of the members of the iconic Caravans. Welcome, the one and only Mrs. Gwen Morgan. Let's give it up for Miss Gwen. How are you?
I'm fine. I was wondering how I got to be included in these women that I've known so long. And just to be a part of it, I am honored.
Well, we're glad to have you, and every last one of you are worthy and deserving of the opportunity to speak and share. And as I've said, there are so many others. It's hard in programs like this to pick and choose. You don't want anyone to feel slighted. But I even told the church on Sunday, I'm going to do one with the older ladies of our church. I purposely didn't pick anybody from our church just so I didn't hear back, you got to have church meeting pretty soon. I don't want to have any problems. But it's good even within our church context. And I would advise all of you who are watching to reach out to the elders around you, male and female, your grandparents, people you know through your church affiliations. Sit down and listen. And I believe that by the time that we're done tonight, you will have heard wisdom, some history, stories that will encourage you and kind of pull you into not just where we've come from, but where we're going. Because if you don't know where you've come from and you don't know that path, you really don't have a clear path, nor do you have purpose or even power to move forward. And so I want to start this discussion and remind all of you to please like, share. If what these ladies are saying and sharing are impactful to you, hit the little likes on your phones and your tablets, hit the little hearts on your phones and your tablets or your computers, and let them know that you love them. If you have questions, if you'd like to ask a question on a subject that we're touching on, you can type your question and we'll try to get to your question. And if not, we might have to do a part 2. We'll see. So I first want to start off and just ask a little bit about your background. Just a quick 2-second, 30-second, 45-second. We always try to give time limits and they never work, but a quick idea of where you're from, maybe where your parents or your family is from, if you were a Warren resident all your life, or maybe you came from down south like many that migrated up north. And I'm going to start with Miss Charlene. If you would just give us a quick, about your background and your family.
Okay, I grew up in a small little town, which is probably 25 minutes from here. It was called Wheatland, Pennsylvania. There's Sharon, Farrell, and Wheatland. My mother and my father were from Alabama, and my husband was from Selma, Alabama. You could count on one hand the number of people that was in Wheatland. And that's why I'm a Steelers, because I'm a Pennsylvania girl, and these Ohio people don't understand why I'm a Steeler, but that's why.
Tell them. Wonderful. And when did you move to Warren, Miss Charlene? When did you move up this way?
I moved to Warren after I got married. So I moved to Warren in 1967, and then my husband, he was drafted to go into the Army, so I went back home and I moved back to Warren in 1970, and I've been in Warren ever since.
Okay, all right. Cousin Teenie, tell us your story.
Well, I was born in Warren, Ohio. I've been here all my life. I graduated from Warren G. Harding High School, and I'm from the east side of Warren, but in my lifetime, I've been all over Warren. The north end, the east, the west side, and the east side.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. And Miss Morgan.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Well, my parents were born in Alabama. And my father, he loved tinkling with what should I say? He used to love to do a lot of animals. And when I say animals, he loved to take his pigs out there across from Second Baptist and slaughter them. I remember that. And they were born in Hickman, Kentucky, same as I. And we moved here as young children. And I graduated from Warren G. Harding in 1956.
Wow.
And moved to Chicago, and I attended St. DePaul University. And prior to that, I served so many churches in Warren as their musician. I started out at, beg your pardon, at Second Baptist. I was playing for the choir after Ernestine McLaughlin had passed away, and Guy Lindsay. And so I became the musician at Second Baptist and also at Grace AME and at Progressive Baptist Church. And so I was one of the ones that was moving around to all of the churches trying to play for their choirs.
Well, we all appreciate you, and on behalf of every Warren church, you deserve the most massive musicians appreciation that ever could exist. And if you mess around with us, we just might give you one. If it wasn't for this pandemic, we all be in Packer Music Hall somewhere celebrating Miss Gwen Morgan. Her name is on the plaque on the wall at Second Baptist. what was it, choir number 2? With choir?
But also, I am a member of the choir at St. James. I have to say that.
Yes,
because
you are.
Tell me that I need to go back to Second Baptist to all those choirs I mentioned.
Well, we don't got it like that no more, but we are on a strong foundation, and that's a part of what this conversation is about. You know, where we're from and what we have endured that brought us to this place. And that's where I want to go. This weekend is all about the legacy of Dr. King, but I think it brings to mind the entire struggle of our people in this nation, in particular in the 20th century and those times of change and transition. And many of you, all of you, lived through that. And individuals like myself, I was born in 1982. I never knew a world where there wasn't a Martin Luther King Day. I never knew a world, you know, where we didn't celebrate these things and you didn't have Black History Month and you didn't have those things. But I think it's important for individuals who are my age, slightly older, of course, younger, to know that it wasn't always this way, that there were always celebrations and cultural recognitions, but that we take for granted how Dr. King is viewed, how the movement is viewed, the blessings that we live in, that this all came from somewhere. And I want my cousin Teenie to talk a little bit about that. When you were coming out of high school and getting married to cousin Roy and establishing yourselves, what was life like that as children and then becoming adults and establishing yourself? What were some of the difficulties, some of the challenges that you all faced?
Okay, when we graduated from high school, it was hard to get jobs. And those that did get jobs were usually of fair skin.
What do you mean by that? When you say fair, do you mean just white, or do you mean?
I mean what? White chocolate people.
Okay.
White chocolate.
All right.
The thing is that there was McDonald's and other places, fast food places, but we couldn't get jobs there. They didn't hire us. The only thing that we were able to do basically was working house work for people or babysitting for people. And it was just hard. It was hard to make a living back then.
Were there distinctions between the types of jobs you could get? For instance, some people, weren't allowed to work up front or in the managerial positions or in the visible places. Did you see a lot of that, or even getting into the unions or some of the manufacturing places?
Well, that was it. Like, it was really hard getting into Packard Electric. You had to know somebody, and even if you knew somebody, you had to have a real strong pull in order to get into Packard or either Ohio Lamp. Those were the two places that were really doing a lot of hiring then. And at one time, I had to go down to the unemployment office, and I had told them that I had my letter in my hand to show them that I was going to go to I was sending the letter to the state unemployment office and everything, because they weren't sending us to different places to get jobs. And then later on, I found out why, because they had an investigation and they found out that they were putting Black people's, the first letter of their name would be capitalized, and it would be above the line or either below the line to let the people in the unemployment office know whether or not you were Black or white.
Wow.
And,
so they were marking you guys so
right.
that they knew without seeing you whether you were Black or white, and that would dictate the jobs you were sent to.
Right.
Wow. Wow. Sister Morgan, we know your husband, Sonny, and I talked to him last year, and he gave us so much knowledge about, he's been a union advocate and worker for years and years. So what were some of those experiences for you? Because obviously you were doing music and different things like that, but that doesn't change the realities of opportunities that existed. Could you tell us a little bit about that and some of the things you faced?
Well, one of the persons that was instrumental in me having a job at Packard Electric was my mother-in-law, because she worked for a doctor and she worked in homes also. And knowing those people, she was able to get me a job at Packard Electric. And once I got there, there'll be people that will tell you she didn't do anything but just walk around. Yeah, I did some of that also, but I did have to work. But I got home from work one day and my husband said, Albertina Walker wants you to call her. We were good friends. And I said, what'd she want? And he said, I don't know. So I called and she asked me if I wanted to come to Chicago and sing with the group. Well, naturally, me loving singing and singers and all of that, I immediately said, yes, I want to come. So she sent me a ticket and I flew to Chicago. And from there on, it was traveling. I began to kind of get tired of the traveling, because driving, you had to drive. They had stipulations, I might add. You had so many hours that you had to drive according to the distances that they were going. And so with that, I love to drive anyway, but I didn't want to have to drive every single day. But it seemed like one of my jobs at Packard Electric. I was the driver and everybody in the car would be asleep. And so once I, kind of got used to, the traveling and all of the things we had to encounter as we traveled, I began to enjoy just being out there on the road. Wow. And the fact that I didn't have a job in Warren then, because I had left Packard Electric.
Yeah.
So I eventually began to sing with some choirs in Chicago, because I was living there after a while. And Albertina had directed me to Reverend Clay Evans Church. And so I joined the choir there. And so I was singing just about everywhere. And finally, I had talked with Reverend James Cleveland, and he asked me if I would sing with their group. So I started singing with Reverend James Cleveland's group. So it just went from group to group to group. And it wasn't like I didn't like it, because I loved singing. I loved playing the piano. I just loved all of anything that had to do with music.
Wow. Wow.
So the first church, like I said, was Grace AME. I had a youth choir there also. And then from there to Second Baptist. And there it was just like in heaven, because they had a director, Mrs. McLaughlin. Ernestine was her name. And they, we would just run down there for their musicals that they would have on a certain Sunday evenings. And so I just seemed like music was what I was meant to do. And I find myself doing that all the time. I'll grab me about 6, 7, or 8 children, and I'll bring them to the house. Yeah. And then I'll start them to singing, and I find myself doing that because that's what I love to do.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Miss Gwen. I appreciate that. And you know how appreciated you are to so many people. Miss Charlene, talk about you and Mr. Allen, who's gone on to be with the Lord, and how that was coming up as a young couple, raising a family, establishing yourselves, some of the challenges you faced in the area, even, him coming back and forth from the Army. Could you share a little bit about that?
Well, when I think about my job experiences, my first job, I was a nurse's aide at Sharon Regional Hospital, and that was in 1963. And I remember working on what they called the 2-back. And I remember when President Kennedy got killed, where I was standing on that floor when all of that happened. And then in 1964, after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, every company was trying to get people of color to be hired. And at that time, my father was working for the Westinghouse Electric Company in Sharon. And Westinghouse was very good if you already had a family member in there, that they would hire your children, your wife, or whoever. But I didn't know, and so I was the second person that was hired in there as a salary worker of color. But I did not know until within the last 15 years, there was a little preacher who was an engineer. He was from Greenville, Pennsylvania. And he was told to watch out for me, to make sure that nobody said anything out of the way for me, because at that time, everybody was on pins and needles because of the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And I did not know that until about 15 years ago.
Wow.
I have always been hired in the salary positions, but I grew up in a blue-collar home. And I even majored in labor studies at Youngstown State. As a matter of fact, my last job at Brainerd Stratford, I got fired from that job because I tried to organize the salary workers. Yeah.
Sonny will be proud. We know that. That's why you and Sonny get along so well.
Yeah. So anyways, at that point was when I went and I completed my education. I had a couple years in on my bachelor or my associate, one of them. I know I went from an associate to a bachelor to a master's in 5 years, because I was determined I wasn't going to continue to work and go to school. So I chose just to go to school. So I got married in 67. So after my husband, after he came out of the Army and we moved back to Warren, he worked at Pier to Steel. And I did maybe a year at Packard, but I quit because it was a split shift. Like I went at 8 at night to 4 a.m. Then I got pregnant with my son, and it was just a little bit too much for me to handle. So that's how I ended up quitting Packard.
So it was Chad's fault.
Huh?
It was Chad's fault.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of.
Well, I love it. I love it. And you talked about the civil rights passage, and I know that so many of us don't know what it was like for those laws to be passed and for the differences or lack of differences, maybe. Once when I talked with Pastor Fowler, he talked about even being in Southern Ohio was like being in the South. You know, there wasn't much difference. And then moving up north, it was still racist, but just a different kind of racism, a different way of dealing with it. When you look at the progress, you can go back to the 50s of Brown versus the Board of Education, or the Civil Rights Act of 60 or 64 or 65 and 68, Voting Rights Acts and all of that. Did you guys notice particular changes besides somebody having to watch Sister Charlene and spy on her? Did you notice changes, or were those changes really more like down south, and maybe up north there were just little slight shifts? What was it like as those you were watching those laws being passed and the marching? We'll talk about the marching and the demonstrations in a minute, but were there actual changes in the way you were treated when you saw these laws being passed?
I think the change was more in the opportunity that the law afforded you.
Okay.
It did open up the door to get the jobs, but once you got the jobs, you were still exposed to all of the discrimination and everything that was going on. You were still overlooked for the promotions. You were still put in some of the worst, most unsafe jobs that they had out there. So I guess in a way, it just gave you opportunity, but it didn't have a lot of the benefits that you thought you would have had.
Okay, Cousin Teenie, what would you say about that? As you watch those laws being passed and progress being made, how did it affect your everyday life?
Well, I didn't work outside of the home. I was a homemaker, but I do know that the men, when they got jobs at Republic Steel and some of the other places, they had some of the worst jobs. They didn't get the easy jobs. And like Charlene was saying, the promotions, they didn't want to promote our Black men. They did things to discourage them. In high school, we weren't encouraged to do things to be able to go on to further our education. There was just a lot of little sly things that happened under the cover stuff.
Yeah. And I want to stop right there before I ask Miss Gwen about being on the road and seeing changes and challenges. That results in real monies that were lost, wealth that could have been built when management positions are denied, opportunities for, mobile. And it's not to say that especially the brothers that were working and sisters, they did everything they could and provided lives and wonderful lives for their families and did great things. But you can't deny the accumulation of wealth that when you talk about missing out on promotions and raises and the salaried positions and management positions, that is a real trickle down reality to today that might have affected what they could leave to their children, properties they could, buy, businesses they could start. I don't think you can overstate the generational impact that they went through.
It was hard for our people to get loans too, Todd. It was hard for them to get bank loans here. As a matter of fact, when my parents got ready to build their home on Wick Street, they had to go through Cleveland in order to get a loan to build the home.
And the interest rates and some of the stipulations that was attached to those loans, you probably wouldn't do it today.
Right.
Froze a little bit. Okay, I hear you.
And the VA loans, the VA loans, they didn't treat our men right or women when it come to VA loans also.
I have heard stories from several of our elders about how, and we honor all of our veterans, Black and white, but that some of those extra hoops they put our men through, especially the men that were coming home. We talk about the benefits that were afforded to our veterans who were coming home from World War II and Korea and Vietnam. They did not get the same treatment and the same benefits, or they were given the runaround with, they should have gotten housing loans and the GI Bill, the schooling and all of those things. And that impacts again. Sister Morgan, as she mentioned, was on the road traveling, living, in Chicago and back to Warren. And did you notice differences in how you were treated? And I want you to tell the story that we talked about on the phone about when you were on the road and other people sometimes had to go in establishments for you because you guys couldn't go in certain establishments and things like that. Can you speak on that and then tell us if it changed or if you saw it different next time you went to Alabama in the 70s? Maybe it was a little different. What can you tell us about that, Sister Morgan?
Well, traveling with Reverend Cleveland, he had one of his singers from California, and sometimes we'd be so hungry. So what he would do would send him to the back door because, we were Black, it's kind of hard for us to get service. So he started bringing one of his singers from California, and he would send him to the back door to get the food for us. And so that's how we were able to do that. And anyone who knows James Cleveland knows he'll find a way. And he found that way for us to.
You couldn't eat in the establishments. You
no,
couldn't go in many of them.
No, it's of course because we were in the South, and so not that we didn't travel all over, but during that period, we were down south, and he had to find another way for us to get food because we didn't travel with like a bag or something with us. And he would send the guy to the back, and he'd come right back with our orders. So that's how we were able to get fed, if you will, during those travels. And the other thing is we were out traveling, and I was with Albertina at that time. And I had to go and pick up one of the girls that sang in the group. And I was blowing the horn for her because I was telling her that Albertina told us we know we had to go to New York. And she opened up the door and she says, Gwen, they just killed Martin Luther King. I said, what? She said, they just killed Martin Luther King. And I was wondering why, as I was driving to pick her up, I saw young people, they were out on the streets and they were knocking over the garbage cans and setting fire to them. And I was trying to figure out, what are they doing? But then I realized once I spoke with Lolita, then that let me know what that was all about. And so we knew that we were already in Chicago. We were able to go and see a lot of things and go to a lot of places that we would not normally have been able to go to had we not been with someone famous like a singer, and like I said, like with Albertina, and she made sure that would happen. But it was late evening, and the people were in line to visit not the grave, to visit and view the casket at the school, university. And there were two policemen, and they said, well, we'll let you go and view, but you can't stay a long time. You have to view and leave. And so we were able to at least see that. And I think about that even now, that we were able to view him lying in state.
Wow.
And even though we had to leave, and at that time, if you remember, they used to say that there was hippies, how they would be traveling and they have their bags. And there were, like, I would say a whole row of people that were sitting in the back of the church with their bags, and apparently they must have already been through the line.
Mm-hmm.
But the policeman told us that we could view, but we could only stay for just a few minutes. And so I look back at that and I said, that there itself,
wow,
that was something that, I can never forget. because I was looking and I said, I'm looking at this and we're not really supposed to be here.
Yeah.
But he was just so kind and gentle. And he said, but you can't stay long. You can view and you have to leave. And so that's what we did.
That gives me chills just to hear you say, having a chance to just go to the viewing. That just means so much to hear you and to know that people from right among our own community, we're so interconnected. And because of that, you were able to experience that, terrible, tragic moment, but a memory you could share with others years and years later. And I want to segue to that because obviously most of our lives were up here up north in Northeast Ohio. And in Northeast Ohio, there weren't necessarily the exact same type of marches and protests going on. They were things done in support, I'm sure, of the movement. But we don't realize that there were sometimes mixed feelings about the movement and what was going on down south. There would be people who were very supportive and ready to go down and help and march and support and send money. And then there might be people who felt maybe it's too fast. Who's this young upstart? Look at those children being killed, or the hoses, the dogs, unnecessary pain. What were some of the responses, especially as the civil rights movement heated up from the late 50s through the 60s? Maybe if you were just listening in on adults or hearing what was being said and maybe opinions among yourselves on your jobs or different places, what were some of the perspectives about Dr. King and the movement at the time? And I want to start with Miss Charlene on that. What were some of the opinions and perspectives being shared up this way?
Well, I don't know about up this way so much, but I remember it was a national disagreement among the Church of God in Christ pastors and the Martin Luther King movement. All of them were not in support of him in those early stages. Okay. And the NAACP and the Urban League were not even in support of A. Philip Randolph when he was organizing the march. Now they all seem to come along eventually, but in those early stages, there was a lot of division among us as African Americans.
Wow. And that's a reality in any case. I think we get discouraged when we see it now, but I think it's just a natural part of human beings. Everyone has a different approach and perspective on the best way to accomplish things. You can't remove human ego out of that, and who gets to lead the way they like to see it go. Sister Teenie, Cousin Teenie, what can you say about some of the things that were experienced, looking at the marches, seeing Dr. King on TV or other figures? What were some of the feelings that you heard or saw or experienced yourself?
Well, for myself, I was angered. Mm-hmm. There was hurt, disgust, and wishing that I could do more than what I was able to do. I wasn't able to go anywhere and, protest, but there were prayers. People prayed for those that were on the front lines. Let's put it like that. Okay. There were some people that left here in Warren and had gone to Washington, D.C. To march. We didn't have any, not that I know of, we didn't have anybody being disruptive when Martin Luther King was assassinated. But it was a hurt, a deep hurt. I can't even explain it.
Wow. I can understand that. And Sister Gwen, if you would share, what were some of the opinions? Did you feel that Dr. King was going to be successful? What was there a feeling of optimism, or did we feel like something bad before he died was going to happen to him? Or did you feel that there were conflicting feelings between people when people would talk about the movement and the marches, even before 1968? Did you hear or feel anything yourself?
Well, it would, the conversation would usually be in the car as we were driving. Mm-hmm. You have different opinions from the different people that were in the car. But for the most part, I was just so surprised when we were allowed to view because I never expected that to happen. And with the police standing there, I was just sure he was going to say, you can't come in. And he said, well, you all made it just in time because I guess we had gotten there as people were leaving. Most of the people were leaving. So therefore, I suppose that maybe he allowed us to go through because it was just the four of us.
When you were, Miss Gwen, when you were playing and singing around, did you hear churches supporting the movement or having rallies in support of the movement? Or I know that there are times when some gospel singers and R&B singers would do concerts to help raise money. There are, we've seen now in the movies that, people like Aretha Franklin or Harry Belafonte or who was the other one, Joan somebody would the Joan Rivers, or it was one of the older white ladies that would make an appearance on behalf of Dr. King, to kind of get people's interest to come and do things. Were you ever a part of anything like that, or any rallies, or like invited to sing at certain things?
Well, we sang at those appointments where Albertina Walker would make sure she had a contract. So with that said, wherever we were to go, she had all of her paperwork and everything that she needed to, get paid. And after that, it was time to leave as far as she was concerned. Now,
you go to the next thing.
So we went to British Columbia, and the temperature there is crazy. It was just like always damp or something there. And I remember on the outside, they had the Mahalia Jackson caravan. Well, we were traveling and covering, if you will, for Mahalia Jackson because she was ill. And Tina, she had that voice that sounded like her and kind of looked like her. So they never knew that it was Mahalia Jackson, that it was Albertina Walker.
Because we all look alike.
Because they think we all look alike.
Yeah.
They just knew it was.
Yeah.
It was called the Albertina Walker Caravan.
They could have just called it Singing Black Woman Caravan and just
Mahalia Jackson Caravan, but it was really Albertina Walker and the Caravans. But we were in British Columbia. They didn't know.
They didn't know.
And Albertina's voice sounded similar to Mahalia Jackson's voice. They had that heavy sound. But the temperature there is not good for singers, especially with my voice, because I was hoarse the whole time I was there because of the temperatures there is different than in the United States. Here.
Yeah, I've been to Nova Scotia, and it's very cold and damp up that way. And there is actually a Black community up that way of the descendants of British loyalists, Blacks who fought with the Britons back in the Revolution. And there's a whole Black community, Black churches, everything, up that way. And I have some pastor friends from there. But that is so interesting that was going on, and what you mentioned about traveling as the caravans and people just kind of taking you for whoever they wanted you to be and whoever they wanted Albertina to be. And that's nothing new. People always getting us mixed up. I want to switch gears a little bit. And we have some people who have asked some questions, and I'm really glad that we have a few people who have a few questions for you all. I want to turn gears a little bit to progress and what you've seen in this area. Up north, up here, and I guess I want to push through Mr. Tim Callion, who we all know asked a question. I want to go ahead and ask his question, and it has to do with you all, with your various careers, raising your families, the work you've done in the community. And he asked, what motivated you, ladies, to persevere through difficult times? What was your primary motivation? what motivated you, what kept you to persevere through these difficult times. And I'll start with Miss Charlene and then go to Miss Gwen. Miss Charlene, what motivated you?
I think just growing up with parents that was born and raised in the South, and they left the South to find a better life, and just hearing a lot of the stories, because I can remember my first trip as a teenager to Meridian, Mississippi, and I had this uncle, and his name was Uncle Ben. And Uncle Ben always had all the new cars and stuff. And I used to just think he was so mean, and I never wanted to travel with him because he only gave you enough time to go to the bathroom. And now, mind you, I grew up in a time where kids was seen and not heard.
Right.
He only gave you enough time to go to the bathroom. He drove all night. You couldn't go to a hotel. And I never will forget, I went to a water fountain, and I wasn't looking if it said black or white. He snatched me so hard, but instead of them telling us why all these things was happening, you know what I mean? If they would have said, well, here's why that you can't go to that water fountain and things like that. And I can still remember the anger that he had at me for going to that water fountain. And then I remember him saying to me, you could have got us killed by doing that.
Wow.
But with no explanation. And I figured I might have been maybe 12 or 13 at the time. Then the other impression, we were one of the first people in the community that got the black and white TV with the rabbit ears. And I could remember we were watching the dogs that was being put on people and the water hoses, and I could still remember the sadness in my mother's face. And I just think all of that combined just had instilled something into me. You know, you just should not be treated like that as a human being. Right. You should not be treated like that. And that's what's so sad about people that'll tell you, well, my vote doesn't count anyways. I'm not going to vote. And that just pains me. It's that, yes, your vote does count. These people have died and made a lot of sacrifices for you to have that choice. And you shouldn't just keep blowing it off. And I know people just need to get more involved in the system. A little bit of change is better than you sitting at home and doing nothing at all.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Miss Gwen, what has motivated you through the years, through those difficult times, through traveling on the road, being mistreated, you know, doing your very best? What has motivated you to persevere through those difficult times?
You know, when we talk about traveling, you had to drive at least 200 miles. That was each member's had to. You had to drive, and there were times that the others they were sleeping. I wasn't one to smoke, and so I'd be driving, and you know, and then I started smelling smoke, and I'm saying, oh no, I don't smoke. But I mean, you do have singers that smoke, so it was something that I just couldn't, you know, ignore. But I love to drive anyway. So I would take their turn. I would just go ahead and just keep driving because we had so many miles to go according to where it was that the concert was being held. So I told you how many miles that you had to drive.
Right.
As children, I've always had this love for little ones. I always loved to like train them to sing or grab me a little choir of little ones because it's something about them that causes me something with my heart to try to teach them, you know, how to sing. And those things was always on my mind when I see a little one. I didn't care how old they were, as long as their mother would let me bring them to my home and I was able to work with them. And that's what was something that was always within me. I loved it.
I love that. I love that. And I see your love for young people and how you have trained and been a mentor to so many. And you're still to this day pulling in young people and encouraging. And I can attest, and many of us, you did our family choir one year at our family reunion. They made us all sing, and they brought Gwen in, and she made a choir out of us in the Johnson and Dow family. Teenie, what has motivated you through these tough times, difficult times, mistreatment? You see indignities to your people. It might not happen directly to you, but you feel the pain of what's going on with us as a people. What's motivated you to persevere through difficult times?
Well, first of all, my faith. And like Charlene, I had an Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben was your great-grandfather.
Yes, ma'am.
And he taught us that there was no difference between us and any other race except the color of our skin. And that is embedded in me, that I was just as good as any other person. I had good self-esteem, and that has stuck with me throughout the years. I didn't feel like Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was any better than me or anybody else. Queen Elizabeth is not better than I am.
Yes.
I feel like I'm just as good as everybody.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I don't feel like I'm any better than anyone. I don't feel like people are less than I am, but you can't tell me that I'm not worthy. That I'm not worth something, because I know I am. I used to, one of the things that I used to do, I love children also. And I was out at I didn't work. I was the PTO president over at Alden Elementary for several years. And we just did a whole lot of things with the kids. But even then, there was still some racial things going on, you know.
Yeah.
I'm one that it doesn't make me any difference whether the kids are white, black, Indian, or whatever. The thing is that you look out for the best for all of them. And one day there was a little boy had on some shoes. Or my son was going on a trip, and this little boy had on these shoes, and they were like little plastic shoes. And it was so cold, and it was a lot of snow out. And I came home. The thing hurt me so bad. I came home and I got a pair of my son's shoes that was too small for him, that I thought the little boy could wear, and some socks. And I took those things up there to the school. Then, with me participating with the Board of Education, I suggested that they get a area in one of the schools where they could take clothes that their children had outgrown, and maybe some other people that were less fortunate would be able to get clothes from there. And they finally did do that, but they named that after somebody else.
Okay.
They always took our ideas, and then they put somebody else's name to it.
Right.
So, but the thing is that just as long as the children were clothed and treated fairly, that's all.
Yeah. I had a question asked, and it's from my own cousin Marvella, and it was a little while back, but I want to ask it, and then we'll switch gears to the present and close our session out today. But it's a more historical thing, and I'll tie another piece to it. She was asking, she had been told that the KKK was once very prominent in Youngstown, and did you have any experience, or were they just as prominent in Warren, Ohio, or any other groups where they're prominent, racial groups or known places you don't go or don't do or don't drive through? And I want to add to that with that question, was it, talking back to the movement and different games, did you ever feel that you shouldn't share your views, that you shouldn't make it known on the job or with certain people that you were supportive, because you might be threatened, or your job might be threatened if you were supportive of the movement or certain things of progress. Just want to add those two things together. Was there racist KKK elements in the area that, again, you might have been warned, don't do this, don't do that, watch out for this? And was it something that you should be quiet about around certain people and things? And I'll start with Miss Charlene on that.
Well, I know it was very prominent in Youngstown because I had a professor that wrote about the KKK in the Youngstown community, and I think I still have his book here. I have to find it out. But I don't know about their prominence here in Warren, Ohio. But usually, if something is going on in Youngstown, there's going to be a fragment of it that floats over into Trumbull County.
Yeah. Sister Osborne said it was in Niles. She said it was in Niles. Sister Osborne said there was a presence in Niles. But go ahead.
I do think for all of us, there was probably a period where you just wouldn't speak your mind all the time because, number one, you were afraid of losing your income, for one thing. That was always at the forefront. I don't think that I was ever that concerned about being hurt and beat up and killed the way they will do you now with all the hate that's going on in the world. But yeah, I think that that's always present in the back of your mind. What could happen to you if you would speak out and if you would do some of the things that you would have a desire to do or associate with some group that you would have a desire to associate with. I think that's all part of human nature, to be honest with you.
Okay. Miss Gwen, did you ever feel threatened by any direct racism? Did you ever have experiences where you felt like people warned you to stay away from certain people or things, or maybe it might even affect your career if you spoke out about things or associated with people? Did you ever have that experience?
Not really, because we were like the group, all of the singers rode together.
Yeah.
So therefore, any conversation was in the car. Everybody spoke, how they felt about something, and so I really never had the problem.
Okay.
While traveling, and that's all we did during that time was travel.
Right.
North, south, east, and west. And so, I mean, there was.
Did you feel safer in certain places? Did you feel safer or more free in certain places, like going out west or another place like East Coast?
Well, every once in a while, maybe in the South, but it wasn't something that I would say caused me to lose sleep over. I knew that maybe whatever they said, it was just something to say during that time. And but no, not really, because basically we drove. I think the only thing that would cause anything with us is because maybe one of the other ones did not want to drive, and we had so many miles to go. After leaving a concert, you're tired, you've been singing all this time, and now it's time for someone to drive, and it's their turn to drive, and they did not want to drive, and they knew I didn't mind it, but it always ended up I'd be at the driver's.
I know a little something about that. I was the driver. One time I wasn't but 16 or 17 years old, and the band had me driving all the way to Baltimore somewhere while they slept after work, and I was in New Jersey somewhere by the time we got done, by the time they woke up. Teenie, I want to jump to you, Teenie. Did you ever feel that there were threats around here, presence of the KKK or other racist elements, or fear for speaking out or being a part of things that you should kind of keep things hush hush?
No.
Okay.
During my time, no, I didn't feel that, but there was a time in Warren where it was Warren or Niles where the Ku Klux Klan was supposedly have marched down the street, and also Marcus Garvey. He marched in this area also.
Okay.
I think down on Pine Street, the Pine Street area was a place where a lot of that happened.
Yes.
Frank Sinatra used to. I think it was I can't think of the name, but anyhow, oh shoot, they would be going down. A lot of stars would be down there in the Pine Street area at the different clubs that they had down there.
Yeah, you about to open up a whole new history lesson here. He said Marcus Garvey and some performers, and I'd heard about some mobsters and different ones that were active in that in the area, but I didn't know. But I think you have to assume that as these people are traveling around, and this being a growing area, that it would be a stopover. The Youngstown Warren area would be a stopover and would be a place where they might come through in different times. Who was it? Was it Billie Holiday who got married in Youngstown or somewhere, Pittsburgh or somewhere nearby? So yeah, absolutely. You were going to say something, Miss Charlene?
Well, now it's more of a threat today than I think it ever has been. If you even just say something negative about Donald Trump, look at all these people in the airports and grocery stores and Walmart. They just fight people, attacking people just because they said something about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And people are getting signs at their houses. I mean, it's totally crazy right now.
I agree. We're definitely seeing a resurgence, and that's a perfect segue to our ending segment, just our ending question, which is based on what we all know. And we know that Dr. King is more than a meme. He's more than a quote. He's more than even a dream speech. What do you see positive? And what do you see things that we need to work on in this generation? And you're talking to me, you're talking to young ministers, you're talking to the young generations. In light of all that you've lived through and what you've gone through, and I'll start with Sister Gwen, with all that you've lived through and gone through, and you look at the next generation, you look at the ones you've trained up, what do you have hope for us? And what can we do that's happening in the community that we can help carry the baton and do for you all and carry it on? I'll start with you, Sister Gwen. What do you have as far as a future hope for those of us who are younger and that are going to keep carrying on the movement?
Well, I think if out of all of the young people that we see from day to day, there are some that we need to just talk to them and share just some things with them, because we don't know all of the homes that they come out of. And so some of that has to do with how they act and what they do. I see a lot of young people now, and some of the things that I see them playing around with, guns and this and that and the other. And I'm thinking, what is going to happen if this doesn't change? Because they see it on TV. They see it in places where it should not be. They see it in homes. They hear it. And so, if someone sees something long enough, and young people, it's like if you're eating something and they want some of it, if you don't give it to them, they're going to make a way to find how they can get some of it. And the same thing, I think, with all of the things that we see going on with the young people today. If we could have a way to have, like you have that the place where the young people were having those games and things like that. If we could find a way to talk with the young people, because if we don't, the young people nowadays, they're not like when we were coming along. You would get a whipping. Your parents just did not take just anything. But I see the young people now, they'll say anything, no matter how much you try to talk to them or, try to tell them a better way to do things.
Yeah.
They're not listening.
Yeah.
They almost feel better telling you off.
Yeah.
And I think we need, as the older generation, we still have to talk to them because they don't listen. You can tell that by seeing them on a daily basis. You can try to say something, and next thing you know, you hear something you don't want to hear.
Yes.
Wow.
You're correct. You're correct.
And that's what I see.
Yeah.
And I would prefer to get me a group of children and teach them how to sing than watch some of the things that they're playing around with, guns and knives and you name it. And to them, it's nothing. And it has to be coming from the home, some of it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And you are spot on. It starts in the home. It starts with our standards and respect for ourselves and one another. And we can't produce a movement that changes our condition in the world if we won't respect ourselves enough to take better care of ourselves and respect our elders. I want to go to Sister Teenie, Cousin Teenie. What is your hope with all that you're seeing based off your life experience? What do you want to see more of? And you can even talk what's happening in our nation, the policies or things that we should be working on. What is your hope and what we can do to better ourselves?
For us as a race, I think we need to teach our children from the home to not necessarily teach them, but to be a good example. Every time you look at television, you see people swearing all the time. They don't have respect for themselves. The parents don't have respect for the children. It irks me so bad to be in a store and to hear a mother swear at her children. And I mean small children.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. We have to learn to respect them and to teach them as we were taught. And I can guarantee you that some of these young mothers and fathers, they weren't taught. That's the reason why they're doing the things that they're doing. And then another thing is the film industry, the entertainment industry. They have to become more positive in what they are saying and the way they present themselves. There's so much that I want to say, and I can't.
That's okay. That's okay. We need to hear it. That's okay.
But the children, our children are in dire need of someone to love them. We need to. Sometimes all they need is a hug.
Yeah.
Or for someone to just tell them that I love you and I care about you. That goes a long way. A lot of children don't hear that from their parents or their grandparents. So many things are fleeting through my brain.
That's okay.
And I'm not being able to get it out.
Right. You're saying it just right.
The thing of our democracy, that's another thing.
Yes.
We have to teach them it is important. Now, this is not just for Black children. This is for children, period. Our democracy is at stake. They are trying to take us back to slavery, back to the Jim Crow area. And if we don't pay attention to what's going on, it's going to slip in on us just like it did when they wanted to take prayer out of the schools. Told people, be careful. They're going to be trying to take prayer out of school. People didn't listen. What happened? Prayer is out of schools. So the thing is that's the same thing that's going on with our democracy. If we don't pay attention, we are not going to be able to live the way we have lived in the past or the way we want to live in the future.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's just a lot of things that's going on that our people need to pay attention to.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sister
Young
Charlene.
People, old people, all kind of people.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sister Charlene, you've been on the front lines. We've worked together on so many things. What is your hope? What is your fear? What do you see that we need to do and pay attention to moving forward as a people?
Well, Pastor, I think it's just like the squeaky wheel. The kids that's doing the drugs, the drinking, and having the babies out of wedlock, they tend to get more of our attention. But there's still some good kids that's out there. There's still some kids that want to do the right thing, and they just need somebody to put their arm around them, as you said, Teenie, and to encourage them. There's a lot of these here single mothers. They would like to go back to school. There's a lot more of them that are holding down jobs and stuff. So I think our role as the elders, which I don't like to refer to myself as that, but I am, is to reach out and to intentionally look for these young people that we can encourage them to go to school, to go to a trade school. We may even have to help them to find a babysitter or something. But I just think that we have a responsibility to reach back and to help some of these here young people that want to be helped. And you're right. One of the number one things that we have fallen down on is taking our kids to church, being in church with them. I don't remember a time in my life, even if my parents didn't go to church. My mother always did, but not my father. We were always in church. And that's where it starts at. Somehow, in some way, we've got to encourage these kids to come back to the roots, because we all know we can't do nothing without Christ in our lives.
No.
Absolutely nothing is going to work outside of Christ. And then the other thing, though, Pastor, and I'm glad that you have seen that need. From the political perspective, we've got to get people trained and mentored and interested in running for these political offices, because there's only so much that you can do from the outside looking in.
Right.
You got to get on that inside in order to affect any type of change.
True.
So, Pastor Todd, I'm glad that you ran. I'm glad that Vince Peterson and Bria, and I know that there's other qualified people that's out there that could run for some of these positions. So I'm just really not giving up on this generation. I just think that God still got some good people out there, and we just got to find them and encourage them along.
Wow. That's so encouraging. And I can't think of better ending words than that God still has so much to do in us. And yes, we've had challenges from the outside, from the inside, but you are all living testaments of how God can bring you through and bring you out and allow you to have a positive impact on lives around you. And the reason I invited all of you and thought of you is because all three of you have had wonderful, incredible impacts on my life and my family. And you are like family to me. You all feel like, I know Teenie's the cousin, but you all feel like my aunties and my grandmas and people who will look out for me whenever I see you. I know there's a friendly face, and I can attest that many other of the younger generation in the Black community, especially, when we see you, that's the positivity we encounter. That's the smile we encounter. That's the goodness that we encounter. And we have to remind ourselves of how important our elders are. When you're young, you're trying to compete and make your way through life and all that. And to have people who are along in life, who are confident in themselves and they're fine with life and they're just looking down and watching us grow up and raise our families, that means so much. But I want to reiterate what Ms. Teenie said and what Sister Charlene said. And I know Sister Gwen agrees. Because I'm a preacher, I cannot get away from the fact that we have to keep our spiritual bedrock, be involved in our churches. No, we're not always perfect. I was just criticizing something I saw this week that I thought was a little crazy and off the wall. But for every off the wall or bad experience you might have had or heard about, there is good, positive, uplifting, spiritually, growing experiences. And there's nothing like having a space of your own to be yourself, to express yourself, to work with others. And for the Black community, the church has always been it. And I know I speak for many other ministers when I say that we still are. We still want to be that. It might not be everything you want or like or desire, but it never has been for anybody. It's always a work in progress. And I want to also reiterate what we said about political process. I don't mind being involved in politics. Was never sure I was going to run for something for sure. And we need to vote. We need to be aware of the laws that affect our people. And we even need to be open and aware to what is coming around the corner and some of the trends that are happening. And there are voting rights acts that are on the docket right now that are being blocked by the Senate. And I'm encouraging all of my younger generation, especially, and even older people, you need to learn what these terms mean. You need to know why a majority matters and the filibuster matters and why these down ballot elections matter, these congressional races, the redistricting, the gerrymandering. You need to Google these terms and know what they mean. They were going to put us in a district that was going to be guaranteed Republican control. And I'm not saying that it's about Democrat or Republican, but it shouldn't be skewed in either one way or the other unfairly, that it dilutes our votes and makes our vote not count. And I have allies on both sides of the fence, or people who think they're allies or friends. And I always call them to the carpet, whether we are friends and we talk or not, that there are things that affect my community and our people. And the proof is in the pudding, whether you are for those things that will help our people or against those things that will help our people. And make no mistake about it, Dr. King would be promoting and pushing for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to be passed. He would be promoting and pushing for the Freedom to Vote Act to be passed. And I'm pretty sure he'd be promoting and pushing for the Build Back Better Act to be passed, because it would be filtering down funds and resources to our communities. And so I don't want to just talk about his principles. I want to remember that he was a man who promoted policies that would help our people. But tonight, I just want to tell you thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Miss Charlene. Thank you, Sister Gwen. Thank you, Cousin Teenie. You mean so much to our community. And this little conversation, I said on to you guys earlier, it's like a living room conversation. This is, I think, great wisdom that those of you who are watching, you still have time to share it, to tag people, maybe even take some points that were said and sit down and talk with some young people about it. And I'm sure every one of these ladies and many others would be more than happy to sit down and share with younger generations about their experiences. I know Gwen's ready to start a choir. Charlene's ready to get some folks registered to vote. Miss Teenie wants us to know our history, where we come from, and get our values straight and our youth on the right path. And I know that there are so many others like you that are there for us. So to everybody that watched, to everybody that tuned in, thank you so much. I'm going to put you guys in the back room. You don't have to go away for a second. Stay right there. I'm going to put you in the back room and say goodbye, and then I'm going to come back. But before we do, everybody give it up and give some hearts, some likes, some claps for our panelists tonight. Everybody give it up for them. I see you. I see you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I see the hearts. I see the likes. Make sure you share this. Make sure you tag somebody. This video will be up as long as Facebook and YouTube exists. We'll have this video on our page. I'm going to let you ladies go. Hang right there. Don't touch any buttons. I'll be right back for you.
Okay.
Everybody, this was an amazing evening. I mean, I'm so full of emotion and pride and gratitude for these sisters, and not because they came and talked to me for an hour and 20 minutes, but because of who they are and what they represent and who they mean to our community. And I wanted to give them their flowers and the platform to just share and talk and be heard. And I believe they gave us great wisdom, great stories. I mean, just wonderful stories. And I appreciate them for it. Don't forget to continue to share the legacy of Dr. King, to continue to push for those things that will benefit our community in voting rights and uplifting our community and economic opportunities. And you know, I got to say it, in spiritual uplift and having a foundation in Christ, that still means so much as well. I'm already planning our Black History version, and I have a few special persons that I'm going to be doing a panel with for Black History Month, and I can't wait for you to experience some of these special voices that I want to share with in February. So if you haven't done so far, be sure to like and share the Second Baptist page on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, Second Baptist Church, a House of Hope. You can follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/C/SBC Warren, or just look up SBC Warren on YouTube, and you can follow our worship services. You can follow our Bible studies. But if you don't go to our church or follow our church or stream our church, go somewhere, listen to something, get a good message in your heart, get some God in you, get your kids to church. It's never too late to get your family in church, and continue to be a blessing to your community. Everybody can do something to help uplift our people. And so I thank you for joining us. I appreciate you for being with us. Until next time, God bless you and God keep you. You all take care.